Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Trash Talk. This is a show where I talk trash with some of my pals. And this week we have an incredibly special guest, Mr. Kristian Harloff.
Oh, I thought you were going to announce him.
Oh, snap. Wait, where did that come from?
One of the screening at Romulus.
I love that it has eye holes. That it's like,
great.
in case you want to walk around with it.
It literally hugs your face.
That's wild.
No, but it's ridiculous.
Do you ever have because sometimes when I go, I've heard good things about Alien Romulus. I haven't seen it yet. You and I were just talking about it off camera. But I always get a little weird when they give you stuff. I always get a little like, uh-oh. Uh-oh.
You know what it is, though? It's not necessarily swag that gets me the uh-oh. It's when they give you drinks.
That was look you up. They look you up. Yeah, it's like, wait a second. Oh, no.
They give you drinks out. Free popcorn and free stuff. And like sometimes, when they were giving out the buckets for Deadpool and Wolverine and that stuff, I'm like, no, that's just for promotion of it. And this is a fun promotion for it. So like they didn't, but you're not wrong to where sometimes you're like, oh, here's a shirt. Here's this. Hey, we're going to pay for your kids' tuition.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Oh, no. Like, I remember it really sunk in with, what was it, Renfield? And they're like, here's this shirt. I'm like,
I still wear that shirt, but that movie was terrible. Not good.
It was real rough. It was real bleak. But anyway, listen, you and I have been friends for a minute.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this new show on my personal channel. Welcome. Thank you, everybody that's joining us, where I get to talk about people, about their journey and their career and all that stuff. And before we get into all that, if you want to check out my podcast network, Only Stupid Answers, you can do that over at Only Stupid Answers. If you want to check out shows like this early, watch them live, you can do that over at patreon.com/Only Stupid Answers. And if you missed the Kickstarter for my comic, Hellbent, the complete edition, you can check out the pre-order store that we're doing through BackerKit. If you go to hellbentcomicbook.com, there should be a little button that says, take me to the pre-order store, and it'll take you right there. So if you missed it, don't worry. There's still an opportunity for you to get the comic, and this will be shipping out later in the year. So now with the business out of the way, I always like to start these shows with something we used to do over at OSA, kind of ease us in. I kind of stole it from that and ask my guest, what are you into? What is something that you've watched or you're reading that you're into that you'd like to share with the class today?
Oh, shoot. You know what? You told me that you were going to do that, and I have one of the books right on the side. I'm going to run and get it while you
go get it.
In a second. But I'm watching. I just finished House of the Dragon finally. I'm working on The Bear. I blasted through 3 seasons of the Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
And did you watch any of that?
No, I watched a little bit of the first season, and I've been hearing mixed things about the 4th one.
Me too. I haven't seen the 4th yet, but I watched 3 because I interviewed David Castaneda, who plays Diego. And I was like, well, you know what? I'll go and I'll watch a few episodes of season 1 just so I know what the hell's going on. And I really liked it. So I blasted through like 3 seasons. So talk to him, and I liked it a lot, but it was House of the Dragon to me, The Bear. That's really what I've been checking out. Oh, and I finished Cobra Kai, finally the 6th season, the first 5 episodes.
Yeah. How are you feeling? I'm only a couple episodes into that. For some, it's in my rotation. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
It's on par with the rest of this. What I was having this conversation with Matt Serra, who's going to be on my show on Wednesday again, and we were talking about it. He's like, the first season is like still kind of based in real in the way that Karate Kid 1 is, and he's like, once it goes off and then people are flipping off trees, and I was like, initially that bothered me, but once they just totally embraced that, like it's like superhero stuff at this point. It's something, like the way that it is a complete 80s movie with Star Wars combined with wrestling combined, and it has all of that, like who's gonna turn, who's gonna do this, like it is the new villain of the week. Like it's a good fun soap opera thing for me, and I really the tone hasn't shifted, and it works.
Yeah, I really like. I still like the show quite a bit.
Yeah,
that first season, like you said, it's comparatively much more grounded. It's about 2 guys dealing with like middle age and kind of coming to terms with maybe they peaked in high school or whatever, and then. When you're watching like season 6, you're like, wow, man, we're full on karate war reality.
It's 100%. They know they goof on it themselves, the writers, and they say like, when the hell did karate become so popular in the Valley? The way that they do it, and it's like it's they understand exactly what it is. So, and it's very similar to what like John Wick did, right? When you watch John Wick 1. John Wick 1 is like you feel like John Wick, if he gets shot, he might die.
Yeah.
You could throw John Wick off the Empire State Building right now and he'd be fine.
Yeah, he'd be okay. I want them to do a scene where like just a normal family outing in the valley, like playing putt-putt. And in the background, a big karate battle breaks out. And they're like, well, that's just, it's the valley, man. I don't know what to tell you.
All right. So this will tie into our later conversation, I'm sure, too. But so I was sent this whole thing of books, and it's basically the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, and it's basically proof of survival of human consciousness beyond permanent bodily death. And it's like this, and it's like 4 or 5 of these.
Wow.
And I'm only through book 1, and it's just fascinating. Like very educated people. There was $1 million prize for the winner, by the way.
Really?
And it was just research and ideas of like what happens consciousness with, whether it's dreaming, whether it's when you're in a coma, whether it's does that lead what happens to when after we die, and all these things. And it's just fascinating. When I have my free time at home, whenever that is, and I try to sit down and read for a little bit, that's what I'm reading right now.
So it's like almost like an encyclopedia set, almost like here's this full set.
It is.
Study.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What is and it's a bunch of people competing.
There was Robert Bigelow, who you look him up, he was very much associated with UAPs and things and study, and he's billionaire who has been studying this stuff with consciousness. He basically had these people who come across, submit these essays, and the winning essay, I forget how many prizes there were. I think it says it in the beginning of the book. I think it was like 3 or 4, but the first one they upped it to around close to $1 million for the winner. And It's just a bunch of people like, professors and like very highly educated people that are putting these things together. And when you read them, it's like the experiences that they had. And there's one guy who it started when he had a dream about his uncle. His uncle had visited him in his dream, and then he woke up and he had found out that his uncle had passed. And it was the idea that it felt, and it was like it wasn't a dream where I just, the way that he explains is obviously a lot better what I'm doing, but like he says that it wasn't one where you just go, oh, I saw so and so in my dream last night. It was like as if the way that I'm talking to you right now, like it was that clear that he was talking to him. And then when he woke up, he's like, oh, they had to check on him, and he was gone. And it was like, so it goes into more than that, but that's that's what put him on the path to start studying it. And that's one of many, many, many different things of the idea behind it. I just find that kind of stuff fascinating.
Absolutely. Do you know if anybody won the prize?
Yeah, there was. I don't know, guess who. I'm pretty early into the book itself. But there were a bunch of, they were all given out. I'm trying to see which one won yet, but like I said, I'm very early into it. They sent it to me because on some of these accounts that I follow, I saw that somebody had gotten those. I was like, oh, I'd love to read those. And I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I was like, hey, I have a podcast that I cover this stuff. I'd love to read it. And then 3 weeks ago, it was sitting at my door.
That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar with, maybe haven't seen the episodes where you've been on or the stuff that you do, what kind of content do you make? What do you do?
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Okay.
No, I think that I like to say it's just regular conversation, pop culture chat. You know what I mean? Like with the spin of comedy or humor rather. And it's something that I think that I started doing with Mark Ellis back in the day and continue to do now. It's I just always wanted to do, when Mark Ellis and I started doing this back in like 2008, 2009, it was the idea. Nobody was really doing this. Now everybody does. Yeah. Nobody was doing it back then. And the idea was just, we literally would pitch it like this. Like, hey, when we would go to the movies and then afterwards, when the movie's over and you stand outside the theater talking about it with your friends, let's do that, but on camera. And because at the time it was everybody's writing it down, and the critic would do this and say, I'm smarter than you, and this is why film is so intricate and internet. And you just like, every critic was like that. And you're like, well, what about the person that just reviews them and just talks about them and isn't necessarily a critic, but someone who just talks about them? Yeah. And we did that, and that evolved into, many different things, and from doing, whether it was working at Fandango or Collider and Skybound, and then turning into like, it's funny how it all kind of came back. You know this too from where you were working. It's that there was a shift in YouTube. It started with the person or the two people talking to the camera. Welcome to our homes. We're in your homes. It's as if we're right there. Then, whether it's the same thing that always happened, the corporations one way or another got their mitts on it, and whether it was Screen Junkie, SourceFed, Collider, whoever it was, there was the big, like, everybody wants to do this now. And then the audience at one point goes, okay, we'll deal with that. We like that. And then they were like, well, I don't think I like that anymore. I think I want to just be in their rooms with them again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when that shifted. I kind of realized that I realized that kind of early, even when I was on Collider, I realized that. But I was, when I was at Skybound, thinking I was going to stop doing the me in front of the camera thing. At one point I was like, well, what if I never really did my own channel with just my name?
Yeah.
And so I did. And I said, I'll incorporate everything with it. I'll incorporate, talking stand-up comedy. I'll talk pop culture. I'll talk TV. I'll talk whatever the hell I want to talk about. And I'll just do things my way.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and it is funny that you talk about that because obviously I was at SourceFed for a while. I was at Screen Junkies for a minute, and it is interesting. There was a big investment in overhead, which does in the long run doesn't seem like it panned out.
Not now.
Yeah.
No, the bubble broke.
Yeah,
and it was just there was too many people doing the same thing, but not enough monetization in order to keep it afloat. Like you could do. And the funny thing is, though, there were things that even like that, now that I was like, oh, if I knew what I knew now, I probably could have brought in more revenue for Collider at one point because I know how to do that now.
Yeah.
But the truth be told, when I was an executive there, I even told Mark Fernandez, who was there, I was like, I told him the same thing. I was like, I don't really want to be an executive for someone else's company.
Yeah.
I want to do my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So go back. So you started this stuff with Mark, you said in 2009?
Well, the first time we ever did a video together was in 2007. Wow. And that was with Current TV, if you remember them. Current TV was Al Gore's network. And we had a friend who was an executive over there and said, hey, asked me, because I had done stand up with her. And she's like, hey, do you want to do this thing? Remember those little flip, like it was like not the phones, but the flip cameras, like the little, those when she sent one to me and she goes, well, we want to review these pilots that are out, these TV pilots. And one of them was Big Bang Theory and everything else too. Yeah. And she's like, there's a whole bunch of them. And we're basically just paying people with pizza and beer. I'm like, sure, why not? She's like, you know anybody that you'd want to do that with? And I was like, yeah. And I called Ellis, who was a Comedy Store friend, and we weren't on camera together, though. He shot his stuff. I shot my stuff. We did it. And then at all the people that they did it with, they liked us the best. And so they had the two of us do it. But at the first, we weren't on camera together. It was like they would put his footage in, my footage in. We'd watch a movie. We'd watch a TV show. They would cut it back and forth. And then I had said, because Ellis and I, coming from stand-up comedy background, we both were like, I was the one who brought it up to him. I go, maybe we should be sitting on camera together while we're doing this. We have a good rapport. And rightfully so. He's a comedian. He's like, really? Don't you think we should just be on our own doing that? And I'm like, I know what you're saying. I understand from the stand-up thing. We're not going to do the Smothers Brothers on stage, but on this thing, it might work. And Mark's always trusted me, and that was one of the first times, and we did, and it worked. Chemistry worked, and we said, let's try this. We sent it back to Current TV, like, yeah, we want you guys on camera together.
Yeah.
So we did that. We had a show with Rotten Tomatoes that this whole thing happened. It's a long story where we thought we were going to get a TV pilot. We thought we had it. Our friend who was executive wound up leaving. They assigned us to deals and everything. And then we found out when we were in Alaska, they replaced us. And then we were like, well, you know what we could do? We could just stop doing this and never do it again. Or there's this YouTube thing going on. Want to try to do that? So we started it on YouTube, and we just called it Schmoes Know. And we started, I think, our first real video, because we started the channel in late 2008, but really didn't start posting videos until the beginning of 2009.
That's wild. So rewinding a little bit. So you were starting off in comedy, and what was your first inkling of like, oh, this is the kind of thing, comedy or whatever you ended up doing? When was your first inkling of like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do?
Stand-up comedy,
on camera stuff, like this sort of thing, entertaining.
Well, entertaining was probably when I was super young,
Yeah.
because it was kind of a defense mechanism
Yeah.
where I was a geeky kid, and really I didn't really grow into my I was just talking about this with my daughter. I didn't really grow into my own confidence until I was probably 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I would use that to find comedy. Comedy was what I would do to make people go, oh, that kid, I remember him, that way just to get people to notice you.
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, it was defense mechanism. So and my dad was very funny. My uncle's very funny, and I remember always being a kid watching them at the family gatherings, going, I want to do that. I want to do what they're doing. And I used to watch stand-up comedy with my dad all the time. And the first time I ever really noticed stand-up comedy, or like a very fond memory of it, was my friend Brian Cascia, who, God bless his soul, he was at 9/11, which he was like my create as a kid. It's like my creative. Without him, I don't know if I would have been doing a lot of the stuff I'm doing today. But he showed me. The first time I ever saw Terminator was with him. First time I saw like all these great movies. But he was like, he was like the cool kid. His dad owned a video store. So cool. Back in the before Blockbuster kind of took over and everything, he owned a video store. So he had laser discs, like the big, he had a laser disc player, which for people who don't know what the hell that is, it's like, it was essentially DVD players, but like record sizes.
Yeah. And it's so wild that you have to like explain, because I was watching the Denis Villeneuve movie Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal, and there's a whole sequence where he has to go to a video store with DVDs, and I'm like, this is an artifact now. Like if I were to watch this, like to me, I'm like, oh yeah, video store. But like if I were to show this to my kid in a few years, I'd have to explain, okay, so you had to go to a place, right?
It's like explaining a payphone. We had to explain payphones to my kids. They didn't understand what they were. They didn't know why there was a phone randomly. Say we joined like this pool club out here where I am, and it's like there's a payphone. And my wife, it was Christmas to her. She couldn't believe it that it was a payphone. She was so excited to see a payphone. But anyway, he had a laser disc, and he had these things, and I remember him showing me. This wasn't on Laserdisc, but this was on a VHS tape. But he showed me George Carlin at Carnegie. Yeah, and Carlin was wearing a shirt similar to the color you're wearing now, and it was, I couldn't believe that A, someone could be this funny on stage. B, get away with the kind of stuff he was saying. I couldn't believe it. I went to Catholic school, couldn't hear hearing this kind of language and hearing the fact that he was doing it, and I found him to just be hilarious. And I fell in love with it. And I was watching stand up with my dad for a bit. Always had it in the back of my mind that I always wanted to try to do it. Yeah. But it wasn't until college that I said, I remember seeing this thing. I was in the theater school, but I didn't ever really feel like I fit in to the theater school. It was a very competitive school. And it didn't feel like I fit in, but I saw this thing. This guy, Mike Shader, posted, this thing, hey, stand-up comics wanted. He posted it in like the board for the theater program. And I saw it, and he's like, stand-up comics, we're doing this thing for, if you've never done it before, want to do it. And I called him up and I was like, hey, I'm curious, I'd like to try it. And he's like, oh, all right, well, send me a 10-minute video of yourself. And I'm like, 10-minute video? I've never done stand-up in my life. Yeah. And I never called him. I said, forget this, I'm not doing that. So I think it was like a month later, he called me again, and he's like, I never got your tape. I was like, I don't have tape. And he's like, well, why don't you just meet me for lunch and see if you want to do it? I was like, all right, I'll do that. So I sat down with him at lunch, and they had this troupe that they did, and I got involved in it. And I was like, I was 18, 19, whatever I was. And I did the thing that I eventually gave Bert Kreischer the advice not to do. I drank a few times beforehand, and I remember I took a shot of like Jaeger or something, and not sloppily, but I fell off the stage. But not in like, oh, that guy, that's gonna be a viral video if it was today. No, but more like it was a tiny little stage, and I got really excited, and I stepped back and went off. But I was into wrestling, so I jumped back and made this whole thing, and my energy was like 150%. It wasn't. It was more chaotic than it was funny. But I knew that I liked the way I felt when I was up there.
Gotcha.
And so I started to craft it a little bit more when I was there. But then I started, when I went back to New York in the summers, I used to do, Barry Katz had a comedy club called the Boston Comedy Club, which was ironically in New York. Mm-hmm. And I would do sets there, and I felt myself kind of crafting a little bit more and doing that. And I said, oh, you know what? Maybe if I ever move out to LA, I'll do it there. Yeah. And when I moved to LA, I drove to LA with my dad from Florida.
I
And
drove to LA from Florida
did
too.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and from
Tampa.
where you drove from Tampa. So
Drove from Tampa.
my dad lives in Tampa, but we drove from Tallahassee. It was like
Gotcha.
I was dating this girl at the time, and I wanted to spend some time with her before I left. And then my dad picked me up from her place, and we left from her place, drove to I just got, and that's actually, yeah, because I stayed there. No, that's not true. We went from her place. I got my wisdom teeth taken out.
Damn.
Denver.
You had to deal recovery with wisdom teeth on the road?
It was bad. It was bad. Yeah, my dad and I talk about it all the time. But anyway, I got to LA, and my intent was not to go to LA to do stand-up comedy. It was to be a writer and to work in the film business. That's what I thought I was going to do. I didn't really know. It's a whole other story for another time, but like the whole reason I wanted to go to California in the first place is an experience that I had when I was in the 7th grade in New York, that it was just always kind of planted in my head that I was getting to California at some point.
Yeah.
But I got there, and when I got there, I started working for a company that is now long gone called Intermedia, which was on like right in the cusp of like Beverly Hills, on like Little Santa Monica, right near Century City, not too far away. And I was working in the film business, answering phones, doing all that stuff, and it was very corporate. And I realized very fast I did not like it.
Yeah,
I didn't like it, and it didn't wind up working out. But that's when I've told this story a million times over. But there was an experience that I had at the Improv one night. My friend took me out for my birthday, and I went to the Improv. They challenged someone in the audience to get on stage. I did. It was like an improv. It was a packed show.
Yeah.
And there was like this improv group. This guy, Rick Overton, who's hilarious. You look him up, you'd recognize him. He's in Ferris Bueller. But anyway, they all came after me like sharks on a stage, and I somehow was in that zone.
Yeah.
Where I was just, and what I should take out of this story is the fact that this is the reason why I had the confidence to then say, I'm going to start doing stand-up again, which is true, which is the reason why. But why I usually always tell this story is because of what happened right afterwards, where there were people congratulating me and saying how great it was, and they were excited. And this one woman puts her hand on my shoulder and she goes, "You were fucking great." And it was Sarah Silverman.
Whoa.
But I looked at Sarah Silverman, and I'm fresh to LA at this point, maybe there a month and a half.
Yeah.
And I look at her and I go, "And you were great in Something About Mary." And she's in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The movie. She looked at me like and then I just walked away.
Yeah.
Today I go, "No, dummy."
Yes.
Stop and say, "Thank you so much." That it means, especially coming from you. I knew she was. I mean, this is still 1999 when this happens, but she is still an established comedian in the stand-up world. She's been doing stuff at Boston Comedy Club, which I used to go. And I should have said, "Can I buy you a drink at the bar so I can I want to do stand-up again. I want to start learning about some of these places. Do you have anywhere you would recommend?" Even if she's like, "Yeah, you should do this. Thanks for the drink. See you later." Or, "No, I'm not going to have a drink. But you should try to go to this place." Anything.
No.
And that's not what I did. But nonetheless, it gave me the confidence to start doing stand-up. I found some places and then just kind of tackled the start of the comedy career there.
So then, and that transitions into, you start doing the stuff with Mark, which transitions into Schmoes, and then Collider and Skybound and all that stuff. But now you're back doing your own personal channel, doing basically whatever floats your boat.
More or less. I mean, you still got to pay attention to the algorithm. You still got to pay, if you want to do this for a living, you have to, because there are definitely things that I tried to do that I love that just don't pop and people don't watch. And as much as I love to do it, can I waste my time doing certain things? Because, it's like, I just can't. You got to pay attention to it. But it doesn't mean that you can't still, like, for example, like interviews, right? Interviews to me is one of my favorite things in the world. If I could do interviews all the time, with people, and just like this, where we're just talking and bullshitting, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. But there are times when I'll put out an interview with somebody who I find that I know is fascinating, and the audience doesn't click on it. So I'm like, well, because I've done this before, I'm like, they don't care. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I've done that before. I had a show called One on One with Kristian Harloff that I love doing. I love talking with people. I did it on Collider and it worked. And then I tried to bring it up to the SEN channel, and it wasn't people who watched it liked it, but it just wasn't getting the views. And so I started to run into that recently. I had an interview with Murr from Impractical Jokers.
Yeah.
And I had him on the channel, and I ran it as a single piece, and it barely hit 4,000 views. And I was bummed about it, because then I started a clips channel, and that clips channel actually has done well. And there'll be clips that pop on there from Murs. I think there's a clip that did like 20,000 of his, and the interview itself did 4. But instead I was like, well, I got to go back to old Collider Live kind of route. Basically, lead with a story that I want to talk about about it, put it in the thumbnail, make sure that it's not a clickbait thing, to make sure that you're actually talking about it for a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
So, and then put the interview in afterwards. I've seen the growth on those interviews, and people actually, I wouldn't have watched this. I'm glad that I did. I had this and that. You see a couple ball bags here and there. There's somebody that was just like, oh, I don't watch this for the interviews, and I wish you would have put it separately. I'm like, no, it's my channel. I'm going to do this. If you want to bail on it after the topic that I told you I was going to give you, I gave you.
Yeah.
Then that's it. So that's kind of what that's how I'm running it.
So what are some of the shows you do? I know you have like Sith Council, right? That's
not really.
Okay.
Sith we kind of disbanded it a bit. It's like initially when I started it was big thing was kind of its own thing. Then there was Sith Council, Capes and Cowls, and whatever. And I was like, well, and actually speaking to a friend of mine who I used to do advertising stuff with, he's like, why don't you just basically just make it all the big thing?
Yeah.
And he said you should just not call, Capes and Cowls. But no, you can still do big things / Capes and Cowls, but making sure it's a big thing episode. So Monday through Friday is all the big thing, but it's just but Friday is the Capes and Cowls comic book movie stuff. That hasn't changed. Star Wars really, I just feel it's in such a horrible place right now that it's just not really. I mean, when I'll cover the shows when the shows are out, and we'll watch the shows with the hope that they're going to be decent. But Mike and Steph, they're on every Wednesday, but we talk about current movie stories and everything. It's just A, not a good place. B, it's just not a lot of good. There's not a lot of news right now.
Yeah.
Not enough to carry a whole show.
Yeah. So when does it? Because I find like I've been tweaking stuff. I've been trying new stuff, especially with having a kid on the way, and like trying to okay, how do I maximize the effort, the time I'm putting into stuff, and all that. Yeah. And I always find that when I talk to people, I get different perspectives with the whole YouTube thing, and it's kind of like, how do you navigate that? Like, do you think that like
you mean work? You mean like life?
Not like life, not like that. Although I welcome that insight. I'm talking about the everybody seems to have a different perspective on how to navigate YouTube and the algorithm. Do you feel like anybody out there really has it dialed in, or everybody's just kind of like figuring it out together?
People who know who pay attention to analytics and pay attention to what's changing. I think Greg Alba, The Real Rejects, is really good at it. I think that Luke from the Galaxy Geeks, really good at it. I think they pay attention to what's trending. I think they do the research on it. I think I had a conversation with somebody, and it was probably about a year ago, and we were having this conversation where I was working on a project, and I said, and I was talking to the person about the algorithm and everything too, and the person was like, well, what I found is algorithm's always changing. You can't chase it, so you might as well just ignore it. And I was like, no. I was like, as I said, you can say, you're never going to catch it, which is fine, but you always have to chase it.
Yeah.
Because if it's going right and you track behind it, okay, fine, you can still see it. If it goes right, you go left, or you just stop, it's just going to pass you by and nothing's going to change. You got to pivot all the time, because I know that I realized that pretty quick when I came back to do my own channel. And I initially came back thinking that I could just run my channel the same way I ran Schmoes Know. Yeah. Because Schmoes Know, when we were running it, the algorithm was very, very different. It was I could put up a review about an independent movie, and I can guarantee it's going to do 10 to 30,000 views. I can put up a whatever, a big movie review, and it's going to definitely do 100,000. And people are going to, every time I post one of my videos, my subscribers are always going to see it. I don't care about my thumbnail. I don't care about this. Doesn't matter as long as they know. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I had, and when I came back initially, it was that movie Free Guy, right? The one with Ryan Reynolds. That movie had been out for a little bit. And I said, well, people just, they remember my reviews and when I do it. I did it with Mark for 10 plus years, whatever it was. I'll put a Free Guy thing out, and the way Mark and I used to do, and they'll watch it. Nobody gave a shit about it because it'd been out for so long. And even if they did, they didn't see it because the algorithm goes, doesn't know what people watching this channel for. I don't even know what this channel is.
Yeah.
They didn't know yet. So, and I didn't know that yet. And as I mentioned with Greg Alba, I was on the phone with Greg. Oh man. I mean, and he's busy. So he spent hours on the phone with me while I was at Skybound, and we're talking about certain things that try to do this, experiment with this, because I've seen a lot of people in our space try to do the same thing that they were doing in 2017. And they're like, well, why am I not growing? And it's like, because you're doing the same thing. It doesn't work that way anymore. You got to switch things up. You got to always change it. And especially if you're in a place where you can try things. If it's like, let's say you have a smaller channel, it's like, oh, I'm going to try this today, because you wind up doing a video that hits really well, and then you try to do that on the same topic, it hits well again, and you keep doing it, and you never know what your channel could eventually become, because people want to hear you talk about something specific.
So I think that's a perfect segue into you started doing a UAP show a little bit ago. Was that kind of the process in deciding to do that? Where you're like, I'm interested in this, I'm going to try this, and it started hitting, and so you just started doing more? Or was there a different ethos behind it?
No, that's pretty much it. It was something along the lines of, 2017 was the New York Times article that had come out, and that was when we were at Collider Live, and it was such a big thing with the New York Times covering it, and they're actually showing this footage, and we were very like intrigued by it, and it never really went anywhere afterwards. I mean, if you went deep enough down the rabbit hole, I'm sure there were other people that were leading up to where we are today, but for the most part in the mainstream, you just didn't see anything about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't pay much attention to anything really going on with it. But then there was some story about Las Vegas and this thing that happened in Vegas. And I was looking for topics to cover on Big Thing. It popped up in my feed, and I was like, oh, that'll be fun to do. And Ellis was on.
Yeah.
So I mentioned in the intro, I'm like, oh, we're talking about the Vegas alien sighting. And I said it kind of not in jest, but just kind of like in passing. And I forgot about it and didn't even bring it up on the show. And people in the comment section were like, you said you were going to bring that topic up, you never talked about it. And I was like, oh, you know what? Let me look more into it. And then he wasn't there to do it. And I started talking to him, and I started looking into it. I go, that's interesting. And then I told you this story that I can't remember what show I was watching on Disney Plus or in National Geographic pops up, and it says UFOs investigating the unknown.
Yeah.
And it was a 5-part series, and it pops up, and I was like, I'll watch this. And I thought it was going to be like, the ancient alien stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was more about the military personnel over the years, the incidences that have happened, the New York Times article itself, the whole breakdown of it over 5 parts, and more about not necessarily are there aliens among us. It was, what is that flying around out there, and who's trying to cover what it is, whether it's foreign governments, whatever it is, what is it? And I thought it was fascinating. So I called Riley, who I knew was into it, and to Riley has had his own experience. And I said, hey, you want to come on this like Big Thing? We're just going to talk about this thing that I saw on National Geographic and just how it's been, kind of fascinating. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we did, and it did pretty well, and we had fun talking about it. And I said, why don't we just do this every once in a while? Like, I think it will be once a month.
Yeah.
And then randomly, within the next couple, David Grush, for the people who don't know, David Grush was part of this program that he was working for the government. He was high level intelligence officer, and he had an interview with Ross Coulthard on News Nation, where he essentially said that there was this program, there were these things, we are in possession of not only craft but bodies and all that. And it just happened to be, that time. And I said to Riley, what, we just started talking about this, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
And they said there was going to be a hearing, and then there was a hearing, and then it went from being, no, we're not, instead of once a month, it was every week. And then I couldn't believe how well it did for the channel, and it
Yeah.
started bringing in more people. But eventually, going back to what we just talked about, eventually, and well, YouTube had an algorithm change, and that definitely didn't help, but it was still doing it. At one point, it was doing anywhere between 100 to 200,000 views an episode,
Yeah.
and then it was doing like 30 to 50. But I was like, I think to not confuse the people who are subscribing for this, either whether it's UAP stuff or people who are here for movies, I got to separate it. So I made my own channel. I have a channel called Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff, which is just UAP news, Monday through Friday.
I was just talking to somebody. We're going to stick on the UAP thing, but I was just talking to somebody that was kind of talking about how the algorithm has changed, and it's kind of like doing different type, instead of like making a new show under your own channel, it's better to just make a new channel. And it's like, and we just had that conversation, so I've still been processing that information and what it means to me. But does that feel kind of true to you?
100%. Because it was still, like I said, it was so dramatic in that it was doing as well as it was, to where it was still, even though it was still the highest performing thing at 40 to 50, the algorithm was basically telling me now, well, they're not really here to watch the UAP show as much, and if they are, they'll watch it on Tuesdays, not as much. We're not pushing it out as much anymore because it's not a UAP channel. This channel is a movie news channel. This channel is, they're here for reviews, they're here for this, and that's what the algorithm knows my audience wants. And in the same way, I'll do a reaction to a TV show like Game of Thrones, does okay. I do a reaction to Star Wars, it does good, because the audience knows they come there for Star Wars stuff. And you just got to teach the algorithm as you do it more. I'm going to start doing like movie reactions on my channel, and it's going to live there. But like the UAP stuff lives. I mean, I had to build it. I mean, we got to it. There is that panic mode of, well, wait a minute, I'm on a channel here with 100,000+ subscribers, and I was doing good views with it. Why not leave it there? But then it's like, yeah, but if you build the thing, now we're at 30,000 on this new channel, which it's only really been up for about, I don't even know if it's been up for a year yet. And then the other side of it is, I used to put clips for my interviews. I used to put them and try to put clips on all my things on my main channel, and they didn't perform. And I was like, I look at what like Chris Van Vliet and other people were doing, and I was like, I need Theo Vaughn. I'm like, I need a clips channel. And so I started that clips channel from scratch. I put Robert Eiler's clips on there. And within 2 weeks, I was able to monetize it. I was able to, it's only got not even close to 2,000 subscribers yet, but the channel itself in retention and views, it's performing, but it's like a clips. Now I have essentially, 4 channels if you consider the old Schmodown channel, which is kind of just a dead channel that I can't monetize right now anyway. But it's like 3. I have really those 4 channels, but yeah, it's constant work.
So the main 3 are Big Thing, Down to Earth, and your clips channel.
Yes.
Well, that's wild. So was kind of 2017, going back to the UAP conversation, was 2017 kind of your first time really like dipping your toe in the UAP community, or were you always kind of interested in that sort of thing?
Well, I'm always interested in it. I just think it's just too naive to believe that we're just the only things in this entire universe, because the universe is just so big. Now, whether or not you think we're the only ones in this galaxy or anything too, then it's another conversation. But the entire universe and the entire world, and we don't know how time works. We don't know quantum physics. We don't know all these things. We don't really know how it all works. So the idea always fascinated me. I'm just, lack of better words, I'm just too stupid to really know the truth. So I was always fascinated by it and understanding about, and I'm not and I'm someone, I think I don't know. I was raised Catholic, but I don't know. I'm more, was it agnostic, right? Than anything else. And I just think that there's more to it. And so I wouldn't say that I really dove into the community in 2017. I didn't. I just said, oh, well, maybe I'm not wrong. Like, at least, oh, that's something enough that the New York Times is covering that. What is that? What's the explanation for that? Nobody had an explanation for it. That was where I was first fascinated. I didn't really start diving into it until 2023.
Yeah, gotcha. And so now you have Down to Earth. So for those that aren't familiar, I've been on Christian's show before, of the spectrum of things. I agree with Christian. Universe is a big place. I would be genuinely shocked to find out that in the universe, I tend to be more skeptical about anything being here, anything having shown up here, and even more skeptical about the idea about the government having things, just because I just don't believe in the government being very good about keeping big secrets capably. So I am not caught up since I've been on the show.
Yeah.
Where are we at with the UAP stuff? Where are we
so
kind of
much. And just to address that, and that's the thing, is because like you said, you're not caught up on it, which is totally understandable. But like, and that was always the argument, where I don't disagree with you, by the way, that the government themselves, the traditional government of what we know, wouldn't be able to hold the secrets, right? Well, there's two answers, in my opinion, to that. One, if you listen to what the majority of people say, whether it is a David Grush, a Lou Elizondo, any of these people, the government, as we know it, they're not the ones that are holding these secrets. It's private companies. It's private companies like Lockheed Martin. It's private companies that have been holding these things, and it's almost like a side sect government that have been holding these secrets. So whether or not you think that these kind of secret op government organizations could hold those secrets is another conversation altogether, because we don't know enough about them. So whether or not they could or not, that the government itself, if you wanted to go down that route, the answer is they're not very good at the secrets, because we know about it. And it's been out there already. And this 2017 New York Times thing, like you just said, they wouldn't be very good at holding it secret. Well, they weren't. It leaked. There was other things that happened. But I don't think, just to answer that part of it, I don't think it is the traditional government. From the more and more I hear about what it is with these private companies and the things, like listening to that Grush interview, and it's the private companies that have hold this technology, and the types of technology that has come out secretly and years apart. It's like it's nuts. So that doesn't necessarily answer the question as far as everything going on right now, because there's potentially 2 more hearings. The new report is that there's potentially 2 new hearings that could come out in September. I don't know. Just to let you know, though, also, I've become more skeptical, not with the belief in what's out there, and not in belief of everything that I just said as far as companies and actual technology and things of that nature. I'm more skeptical in the idea what happens in January. Someone comes out and says, oh, just wait until January 2024. Big things, big information's coming. And then nothing happens. Yeah. Oh, hey, so-and-so says that there's a reverse engineering program, and here's the whole thing and everything that happened. I'm like, but how do you further that and then say, you can tell me all these fascinating stories. Yeah. What's the next step past that? Because you can't have another hearing doing what they did. I didn't mind what they did the first time. The first time they were like, hey, just to let everyone aware, there is this organization that does this. We do have this in possession. We have all these particular things. It's like, okay, first time you say it. Okay, that's the first time. Yeah. You can't do that on round 2. Because I know a guy that knew a guy that saw a guy that did this guy with that guy. You can't do that. You have to say, and here's that picture and video of this. And it can't be AI. It has to be like legit. And that, otherwise, don't do the hearing, because you're already harder enough to convince someone like you. You're going to start to lose a guy like me who's on board with it. Yeah. But you got to move it to the next thing. So right now, Lou Elizondo, who's the guy I mentioned, he has a book coming out where a lot of the excerpts have kind of leaked, and it's all fascinating stuff inside of it. But it does, and there was a guy that posted this thing that basically said the same thing that I'm saying, but it's like, okay, great that he knows all this, but the follow-up question is, how do you know all this? Yeah. And how do you know it, and how can you prove it? That's what you got to come out with this stuff. But there's that and the hearings, and then it's the Schumer and Rounds bill in December, which is the one for me that I'm going to be, I don't think it's going to pass. Yeah. But if it does, that's when I think, if they can actually get the Schumer and Rounds bill, that's when I think I get a text from you in the next 6 months that says, okay, maybe I'll listen a little more. But I don't think that text is ever going to come, because I don't think that bill is going to pass.
So what? Explain more what the Schumer and Rounds bill is.
Sure. So if you know Chuck Schumer, obviously Senate Majority Leader, he made a promise to Harry Reid, who was a prominent figure in Congress, and basically wanted to investigate more. He was the one who commissioned the program itself and had Lou Elizondo do a lot of the work, worked under him. So there was something in Congress of last year, at the end of the year, where they put forth this, they tried to put an amendment into to get passed that would essentially give the government the right to not only declassify things, but something called eminent domain, where if you had certain technologies, whether it's like the Skinwalker Ranch guys and those things like that, if you have certain things and there's places, if we think that you have certain pieces of technology or anything to do, as the government, we can take that over. So that part of the bill didn't go through. There was one of the members in Congress, Mike Rounds, who was heavy donor. One of his heavy donors was Lockheed Martin, who I mentioned to you before, and he was one of the main people who helped block the bill. It was gutted. It wasn't blocked, but it was gutted, and there was certain things that went through in this thing, but essentially they're trying to get it to go through in that form again, which would mean that there would be, it would open up the floodgates to more classified information having to, you can't be protected from these companies, these Lockheed Martins and other things. If the government came knocking, they have to open their doors. They have to there's a lot more to it. So right now they're super protected. And they're going to continue with the amount of money that they have and the amount of politicians that they have in their pockets. They're going to be protected. It's not going to get passed.
Well, listen, I'm all for, going after corporations in any, any capacity. You know what I mean? Any less protections corporations get, I'm all for that, no matter the context, I feel like. So if that bill gets passed, you think there will be more opportunity for, let's use the phrasing, more concrete evidence?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was less class because right now they rely on it's classified, you can't talk about it. A lot of these guys, like the thing that was frustrating you is in that hearing, I can answer that, but I'd have to answer it behind a skiff. I can't answer it here. I can't answer that right now because there's these things that they hold on people. And the other side of it is there's 40 plus potential whistleblowers who have worked for these companies. And this will make sense financially for people, right? It's like there are these people that want to come forward, but the thing is, think about like your career. Not only it's still taboo. It's not as taboo as it was before, but it's still the way you got to look at it. For some of these people who are going to come out, they're risking their careers overall. They're risking their health plans. They're risking these, and the people who are fighting for the disclosure inside of Congress, they don't have a budget. They don't have a budget to do this. So like you've got the amount of budget that they do have, I think, is something like $1 million, right? Which is nothing with the amount of people. Like if you have a guy that wants to come forward, let's say there's 40 of them that want to come forward, you've got to make sure that 40 people are all taken care of and they can feed their families and they can do this and they're not losing. They're not, like when they go to jobs, you got to protect them. And there's got to be more of that. And there has to be, they're constantly intimidated. And the pilots, did you see the thing, the Boeing, the pilots that saw that thing recently, then they were able to release the footage, and that's also from the fights that have been happening lately. Pilots were not allowed to release a lot of this footage, and a lot of commercial pilots were told to not report this, hand in any footage they've had for years upon years upon years, and they were just kind of told to, because if they reported that they saw something, they were considered crazy, they lose their jobs. Ryan Graves, who was a pilot at the hearing, was one of the guys fighting to make sure that pilots are protected when they submit these things. And there's more and more reports now coming out from commercial pilots.
So when we talk about stuff like going back to the Lockheed stuff and these like non-disclosures and stuff like that, what kind of stuff do you think they're sitting on? Is it like, and obviously we don't, the point of this is we don't know. That's what the information we're trying to get. But, it's like, is it, because if you were to say they might possibly have something that might be tech, I was like, yeah, I could believe somebody wouldn't risk their job for that. Right. If it's like they have a body, I was like, that would be out, because that would be like saying Jesus came back and we have him in our basement, but because of non-disclosure agreements, I'm not going to tell you. It's like, no, people would talk about that. That would be my feeling. So
that's government. That's what the difference between government and these companies. Like if you look at what these there are things, this is when I do think that there are. It depends on also what you think it is overall, right?
Yeah.
And in general, and I had on a guy on my show, Dr. Mike Masters, who is a he wrote a theory with a bunch of guys from Harvard, and very he's a scientist, and his theory essentially, and it's a theory that he came up with these other scientists, is that more on the theory of what this technology can do is that it essentially can bend time and space. Because you and I have had this discussion. I don't believe that these are otherworldly things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in my heart of hearts, I think that it has to do with quantum physics. I think it has to do with bending time and space. I think it has to do with the way that we look at time and the way that we look at things. It's not. It's just not. It's not it. Our brains. We're not fully evolved yet. Too.
Yeah.
What's the human species going to be like if we're still here in 1,000 years?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're going to be significantly different, or 10,000 years if we're still here.
Yeah.
You look at what the human species, what we were like, 10,000 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, so you look at that, and I don't know if it is this scientist that I had on. The theory is essentially that these things could be future humans.
Gotcha.
Is what his theory is.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the hell to make of that, but I just know that when it comes to, I also know in general, as I said, I am never going to ever again say, no, definitely not true, because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything. In the same way that, remember that when I texted you and they had those hearings and the guy brought out the Mexican, the alien bodies. And then it was like, oh, it was fake. It was just paper mache, right? And it's not. Well, it wasn't. They sent scientists afterwards to go investigate it. They're not calling it alien bodies,
mm-hmm.
but they're saying these were organic things. And they actually, but it could very well just be like, we find new species on this planet all the time. It could be a new species that we didn't know about, but we, including myself, wrote it off and said, oh, it's a little like cake meme. Yeah. And now they're taking it to Congress to investigate it. So that's the thing that is, I don't do anymore. I don't do definitely not. I can have my skepticism on it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as what I think they have, I mean, in my heart of hearts, I do think it's technology. I really do think there's a lot of technology that's out there. And I think that if you go too much, you want to go tinfoil with it too, what a lot of people have said and talked about is that if you think about with this disclosure, if they decide what would you, this is something I've talked about with this guy. Let's say that you're an optimist with this subject.
Yeah.
What would you say is the reason why the government wouldn't disclose? And the mass panic is the main thing that they always say, and I think that's horse crap. But to me, I happen to have my reasoning why I think that they are most afraid about it.
And you're asking me why? I truthfully, that's something I struggle with, that I don't know. I think we like to, as somebody that is a writer, we like to, in our fiction, we like the idea of the world, just outside. Like our world's normal, but just under the surface is this crazy thing. But to do that, we need to explain. So like Men in Black. Men in Black's one of my favorite movies. And it's like you're talking about. It's like, well, we don't tell them. Independence Day, another great one. We have this thing, but we don't tell them because mass panic. It's like, actually, one, I don't think they'd be able to keep the secret. Two, right. I think they would say, because that would be, even not, if whatever the first person responsible for it says no, somebody down the food chain will eventually be like, well, I'll tell them because it's going to be good for my career, whether it's presidents, whoever would be know this stuff. So for me, it is challenging. One of the reasons I am skeptical about it is I'm actually hard pressed to, when I really think about it, I don't know why they would keep it a secret. So I don't know that I have a clear-cut answer for you, because I'm not entirely sure that partially because I don't know that they have. I don't know that they would keep it a secret, if that makes sense.
It's again going back to the previous thing where it's these companies, it's the private companies that are holding it. And the reason, the two main reasons for me why I think there is it's like having a secret is power. That's a subsect thing. But there's something that was said that I totally agree with, is that if it turns out all this stuff is true with the Lockheed Martins and everyone else too, and it came to be, and if there were people who were killed because of the secrets that were held. There was these other things, because there have been people who have spoke out about it, and there are people who have not kept the secret, of people who did work in nuclear facilities and these other things too. There have been. It's a matter of, were they discredited? Were they, by whom? And were the people who were discrediting them, were they doing it to protect themselves? But the idea overall is that if there was disclosure, another company who works on this type of stuff with scientists and everyone else too said, well, what is this? We can sue these people. We never got this. We had an opportunity to work on this stuff, yet our company was never given a chance because Lockheed Martin got it. They can sue. Tons of lawsuits. Tons of people could go to jail. All of that. That in general, that could happen. So the protection of many people would, and I'm talking about legacies of people from the 50s and the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Their legacies could be tainted. So that alone is one particular reason. Yeah. The one reason that I happen to think, let's say again, hypothetically, when it comes to the thing I'm talking about with consciousness and all these other things, let's say that the society as we know it, you're told that there's other people out, there's other things out there, but not only that, we know what the story is with human consciousness, because that's all involved with all this. We know that where you go when you die, we know the answer. That is an extremely scary thing to present, because someone who's not having a good life in this run, down on their luck, says, oh, I don't need to be here because my consciousness goes somewhere else. Yeah. Then, that kind of information. Now, if that information is even anything in general that would ever come out, who the fuck knows? But it's a matter of, there's so much more information that maybe not just mass panic, but does it challenge religion? Does it challenge energy? Yeah. Like the structure of the country? If there was this technology out there that, like, look at what electric cars can do right now, and yet we still rely on gas. We don't. If we wanted to, we could have electric cars. We could do all these things, but we still rely on gas. We want the oil companies to keep the money going. We want to make sure that the fat cats stay fat, right? Yeah. Same thing here. If this is the basis of human nature, is that we're selfish, and we want to make sure that, well, wait a minute. They're not all the amount of money that would probably come out and lose for these companies, because you'd have energy like that would just continue to go on. I don't know. So I think there's a lot to it, more than just people panicking. You mentioned you mentioned the book earlier, and then you just kind of talked about, does this kind of, like, I'm going to call it the afterlife conversation. Yeah. Does that factor into this? Does this kind of fall into the same umbrella? I believe it does. I mean, it also it's one of there's so many different theories on it. There's so many different theories as far as, like, when you listen to, there's John Mack, who was a Harvard professor who went to Zimbabwe, I think it was 1994. And there was a school, of these children who, in the playground, all of these kids, it wasn't like 3 of them. It was like the whole classroom. Account for this metal or this orb landing and 2 beings getting out and speaking with them telepathically, and being able to do it through their consciousness and everything too. John Mack, a Harvard professor, went and did this whole study on him, almost lost his job because of it, because they said, what are you doing? You're investigating aliens with children. But after enough, investigation and tests and everything too, realized the guy wasn't crazy, everything too. It was just, he believed in what these kids were saying. And this is when I think that they covered that Zimbabwe case in that documentary that I talked about, that I initially got me into this thing. But yeah, it comes, and there's tons of those types of reports from people about consciousness and the idea of, like, whether it's communication through certain things. And there's, like, certain things that I always wondered about with the way the human brain works, where you'll be having a conversation with somebody, and then you almost know what they're going to say, and then they say it, and it's like these little things. Is that just part of how the human brain works, or is that something greater? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't. It's in the same way that we don't know time and space and quantum physics and all that. I don't think we know really what our brains are capable of. I don't think that we know as humans what we're capable of, and I think that does all tie into it.
Is there something? And I know you said you're not gonna like poo poo anything. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you don't know whatever. When you know, communities are diverse. The UAP community is diverse. When it comes to this stuff, is there stuff that you see? You're like, not that. That's a bridge too far for me.
A lot of this stuff, man. A lot of it's where it's not necessary, but like I said, though, and that was the Nazca mummies, the one I told you, the alien at the bodies at the Mexican thing. I was like, I don't know. I mean, it looks like cake to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then after these scientists are investigating, I'm like, I don't know. And it's like, because there's of course there's crazy shit that people say, and but there's a difference between saying, well, I'm not going to poo it, and then also saying, well, I'm not going to talk about that, because on my channel, what I talk about more so is the stuff that fascinates me.
Mm-hmm.
It is the same reason that documentary fascinated me. It's the people, and I'm with you. I don't trust politicians. I don't trust the government. I don't trust anything. But I do think it's important that they are actually the ones who are trying to get these companies exposed, that they're trying to see where this money is going.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's tons of it, and the paper trails and all this stuff. And I also want to see, like, if there's information out there, let us see if we can handle it, and maybe it is just foreign governments, whatever it is, let's just put it to rest. And it's people. And it's also the thing that's fascinating to me. It is the only damn topic, especially in the volatile place that we're in right now, that seems to be bipartisan. It's like, it's the only thing. Like, when you saw that hearing, Luna, AOC, Moskowitz, Burchett, Matt Gaetz, Schumer, Garcia. I mean, they're all sitting around like they were at a party together. And then if you talk about, Trump or Harris, they'll wind up throwing things at each other.
Yeah.
So it's like, so watching that was like, oh, so this is something that everyone's actually fighting for. So that's the stuff that I'll always kind of talk about. And like, when it comes to these private companies, the things that we've just been discussing, there's a lot of theories that start to come out. Like, what's this? Tom DeLonge is talking about how the shapeshifters and the lizard people and all this shit. And that's when it goes into V territory, I'm like, okay, again, if a lizard shows up and wants to have coffee or takes me somewhere, then I guess I'm a dummy for not listening. But I'm like, that's not the stuff that I'm going to start. Hey, I believe there's lizard people, guys. That's not what I'm doing here. Because, like, as first of all, I told you, I don't think it's otherworldly stuff. To me, it's more, I'm fascinated by quantum physics. I don't know enough about it. My brain will never get there. I wish that it did, but I don't understand it. But I do think there's just so much more that we can't see happening right now in your room and in my room. There's levels of this universe and things we can't access. That's not saying, oh, you think so? That's just science. There's levels of this universe that we can't access. We just can't do it. But what if you found technology that lets you do it? Who says that? You know what I mean? Like, that to me is the most plausible out of all of it. Like the light years thing trying to get here, that's less plausible to me. Like, and then there's reports that people think that there's moons on the bases and shit like that. I think that if anything, it's more plausible. This is the crazy thing about doing this channel. I could have never imagined, like, at one point when I was at Collider, I'm like, holy shit, I'm interviewing Harrison Ford. This is cool. I interviewed a former rear admiral on my show. Like, that's, to me, like, that was like, wow. And this guy is like, this is a very legitimate dude who talked about, I didn't even know what USOs were until this. And essentially, if you had technology that could go under the ocean, that's where I'd go if I was able to survive. Because what do we know about the oceans, DJ? Maybe 5%, 6%. I mean, the unexplored stuff down there. So there's more stuff, and it's more plausible to me that it's, technology with quantum physics and that type of stuff and under the water than it is, light years away.
Well, that pertains to a question I wanted to ask you, because something that comes up a lot with this stuff is the Fermi paradox. With kids at home, if you're not familiar, Fermi paradox is the idea of, if the galaxy is so vast and the likelihood of life being out there is so great, why are we not we're not picking up any signals, we're not seeing any signs. You know what I mean? We've got pretty decent technology that's able to get us pretty far, and yet we don't see any signs of anything. And so obviously, the suggestion that they're not coming from outside would, avoid the question of the Fermi paradox. I do want to know, and I don't know if there is like a consensus, but is there like a timeline of when people would have been interacting, like a modern timeline of like when people have been seeing this stuff, interacting with this stuff?
I mean, the reports go back. This is the other thing that a lot of people believe, and I tend to go down this route, is if it is indeed with quantum physics, with things that are able to go anywhere, jump back and forth and do whatever it is, I think that they could be here before we were. And you look at some of these reports and the hieroglyphics and things that they saw back, and there's photography, or there's art that has these things depicted in them too from BC. So so I think it's a long time. The other side of it is I think that we as a species sometimes get pretty arrogant also, where it's like, well, how come they're not talking to us now? How come we don't see them now? Do you talk to ants when you walk by? Like, do you talk to cows when you go by them? I'm just saying that we don't want to think that we are not the alpha species, and it's like, it's a very good possibility that we're just here, and there's other people or other things, or other, whatever entities that are just way vast superior and can do things. We don't know it. We don't see it. And I again, I don't say this in indefinite to where that's what I believe.
Yeah.
I just open it up as a possibility, because I think it's just too simple, in my opinion, to say, well, no, I don't see it, and they would be here talking to us, and we'd at least pick up these things. How do we know? You don't know what kind of because of our technology and the things that we know. That's what we know. We know our technology. You can't even fathom a type of technology that you can't put your brain around, because we haven't developed it. If there's something like, how the hell does that work? Exactly.
Yeah, and it's something when it comes to stuff like that, when you're talking about hypotheticals of alien life, we have a case study of one, which is ourselves. But I do think there's something to saying that, you use the example of cows or ants, they are aware of our existence. You know what I mean? Like, we are part of the ecosystem with them. Sure. So it's not like they cannot perceive us. And I know I feel like the argument would be that, there's these stuff you're talking about, hieroglyphics or whatever. But we'll see. Like, at the end of the day, I am skeptical of that. Not that there aren't things beyond our understanding, because I feel like, of course, there are, and especially when you get out into the universe. But that we have them pinned down, so like we have pinned down, dude. Like that we have bodies or technology or any of that stuff. I am more skeptical of that, and I think part of my skepticism comes from going back to the National Geographic show, which I watched. You suggested to me, and I watched it. And not to say that anything in the show was incorrect or whatever, or wrong, but I kept running into things that felt intentionally misleading. Mm-hmm. And that made me feel like, well, you're bullshitting me. And so I can't, like, there'd be times where they bring up a document and you'd see the graphic, it would highlight these lines and like, see, this document says this. And then I look up the document, I'm like, that's not what the document says. Or they'd be like, they went to these farmers and they said, because there was it wasn't, I think at that point it wasn't Operation Blue Book, but it was somewhere in the spectrum of one of the permutations of Operation Blue Book. And they're like, well, it's swamp gas, and it's like, and the people that live there didn't like that. And I'm like, well, that doesn't mean it wasn't swamp gas. It just means that they didn't like that answer, because humans have been interacting with swamp gas. The myth of the will o' the wisp comes from humans interacting with swamp gas, which again is not to discredit necessarily
what you're saying. I mean,
anything that they're saying, but it's just one of those it's one of those things. Like, I feel like with this show, like the show, You're Not Being Straight With Me show, and it makes me harder for me to buy into what you're selling me.
That's fair. Yeah. I looked at more into the stuff that the people that were involved in it also, than more so how it was put together as a show, which I understand where you're coming from. But I look at like Alan Hynek, you mentioned Project Blue Book, right? And you look at a guy that was basically brought on to say, hey, investigate this, show this, tell people not real, move along.
Yeah.
Right. And he did enough investigation that he did say that as you were saying, he looked in, and there are some cases that you're absolutely right. It was swamp gas. There are other cases sometimes that are absolutely right. It was just a balloon.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of cases that weren't. And he knew it. And he said, well, wait a minute. I can't explain that and write that off because it's not right. And he turned and he flipped the switch and he turned completely. And he worked with Spielberg on Close Encounters.
Yeah.
So did Jacques Vallée. And they really kind of dove into it. It's more people like that and looking into, and like I said before, the military leaders, the pilots, and so there's just more to it that I like to listen to when I'm hearing those people talk about it, more so than, because look at Skinwalker Ranch, right? That's a show that people kept telling me, like, hey, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. And when you look into, like, Brandon Fugel, who owns the ranch and the things that are going on there, he actually recently, so this whole thing. So do you know who Sean Kirkpatrick was or is?
Yeah. Name sounds familiar, but I don't.
He was the head of Arrow. He ran Arrow for a bit, and he had come out and basically saying, after Grush came out, he wrote a LinkedIn post discrediting or trying to discredit what Grush had said, and said, we never found anything like that. And this and this. Yeah. The long story is that, and basically, that most people think that he is just the guy. He's the new Hynek at the point before Hynek turned. And it's like, no, shush, don't say this. And when you have guys like that, and they're continuously out there kind of pushing this narrative, it's I don't know, the whole thing is completely, it's tough because you can follow both sides of it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Do you think I think we'll end with this. Are you optimistic that there will be like a definitive, like you just talked about this bill that if you don't think will pass, but if it did, I think would provide some stuff. Are you optimistic that within our lifetime there will be some sort of definitive conclusion to this?
That's a question I ask all these people every time. Yeah. Every single Tim Gallaudet. It's funny, when I asked Tim Gallaudet, who is the rear admiral, and I said, do you think in our lifetime we'll see it? He didn't hesitate, and he said yes. I asked him if he would testify. He said yes. Right. So like that was right away. I asked Dr. Masters, who was just on my show. He said yes. All these people that tend to feel like in our lifetime it's going to happen. I don't know. No, I don't know, because that's where I told you before my skepticism goes, because I just feel there's a great quote by George Knapp that I use on my show all of the time. Yeah. These people are better at their jobs than we are, is what he says. And the secrets that have been told, and this is why you said it a few times in the show, and it just, to me, it just isn't the case that the government that we know are the ones who are keeping this secret. They're not. There are people inside of the government that are involved in some of these programs, but the overall government is not the ones who are holding this. Even the way you look at some of these programs, they see the president as a temporary employee, doesn't even get filled into a lot of this stuff. So I asked me that question in January. Okay. If this thing gets shot down again, which I believe it will, I'm going to tell you probably the same thing, which is probably not. We're probably just going to keep doing this kind of run around thing. There'll be more information, more people trying. I want to see what happens with this Lou Elizondo book, which there's so much more we could talk about with this, but the Soul Foundation was basing everything. They had a full plan that Soul Foundation it started with David Grush, Dr. Gary Nolan, Carl Nell, all these different people who started this thing. And they were convinced that the Schumer-Rounds bill would pass. And then they had a plan of controlled disclosure of leading up to 2026, 2027, where everything would just kind of be out in the open. I think they're still relying on the Rounds bill and Schumer and Rounds bill to go through in order to keep that plan going. If not, it's, because Arrow threw a big monkey wrench in it. Yeah.
Well, listen, before we go, I did have one question from the Discord, moving away from the UAP stuff. You just recently switched coasts, and we have a question from Leonard Kim. What are some of the unexpected, unforeseen pros and cons of your move to New York?
Well, the pros is something I think I was talking to DJ about this on before we went on air. Is that one of the pros? When I go to the screenings, I get to go into the city a lot now, and I going into Manhattan and being able to take the train and just uploading stuff and checking my emails and relaxing. I'm not sitting in LA traffic anymore, and obviously the pros of having good pizza, which is really good. Really good pizza, food, and my friends, and seeing my family and my family here, just really enjoying what we're doing. And that, I mean, it's incredibly, where I live, it's incredibly green and it's peaceful, and so I like that. I like the breeze. It's summertime, and in New York, it can get very, very hot. The humidity is something, humidity well also, DJ. So, from Florida and everything too. So the humidity here is something, I wouldn't say it's a big unforeseen thing. I kind of knew it was a thing, and I'm sure once the cold hits, I'll remember that not as lovingly, but right, it's only been 2 months. So the 2 months have been pretty pleasant.
Hell yeah. Very cool. Well, I'm glad things are going well for you. Do miss having you out here, miss seeing you out here. But thanks again for taking this time, man. I really appreciate it. Before we go, remind the kids at home of those 3 channels they should be checking out.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you're fascinated and you want to just find out more information, that's like I always tell DJ, even whether you should be, it's like, and I try to encourage DJ even to watch some of the stuff that I do. Even I like when the skeptic people watch, because I without people like DJ asking questions, then you're just going to get a bunch of people nodding their head and going, yeah. And I think that you need both sides, bipartisan, as we said. So that's UAP. That's Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff. You can go to that channel. If you like my interviews and you like when I'm talking to people, I do a clip out thing. And I know that sometimes shorter clips are easier to digest. Go to the Kristian Harloff Clips channel. But that is where everything kind of is, the main channel, which is just the Kristian Harloff channel. That's where you can find the big thing and everything else.
Go check that out. Go support it. As always, you can find me at DJ Talks Trash. If you want to watch stuff like this live or get other exclusive content, you can do that over at patreon.com/only-stupid-answers. And be sure, if you missed the Hellbent Kickstarter, to go to hellbentcomicbook.com and check out that pre-order store. And we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.